Hello and welcome to the Hill Gardens. My name is Jason. Some of you know me. I am one of the owners of the Hill Gardens here in Fort Fairfield. Have to forgive me, seasonal allergies kind of getting to me today. So I wanted to bring to you a little quiz, as you may call it. You've heard me say multiple times at the end of our videos, keep your food spicy and your thumb green. Well, what exactly is a green thumb? And I have a little quiz here to see if you have a green thumb or not. So each one of these is worth 10 points. Okay, you can see up here in the corner, little 10-point thing. Using your best judgment, you see how much you have to get, how many points you should get for your response to these questions. And we're just going to start with the very first, most basic question of the quiz, which is weed control. So the question is, did you use proper weed control, or did you let your crops be overgrown by weeds? A lot of people have a really hard time with this. I had a really hard time when I started of maintaining our weeds. I had a hard time last year just because of the weather, that some of our crops were succumbed to weeds a little bit. We had a hard time with some of our peppers. So for me on this, I would give myself a 5 because we did lose some crops to weeds, but I tried to really maintain every week a good weed regimen where I would go in with either our garden weasel, which some of you have seen. It's really kind of an 80s tool. It has blades that go like this that you run it along in between your plants and it chops up the weeds. I've used that before, but the best tool you have is right here. So going in and pulling your weeds on a weekly basis, weather permitting. Of course, I'm not going to ask you to go out there when it's thunder and lightning to take down your weeds and clean up your beds and stuff. Mulch is a good way to take care of that. There's also a woven weed cloth, which is a type of woven, I don't know if you'd say plastic or poly, that you burn a hole through, and that's what you plant in. But through that little tiny hole that you burn for your seed or your seedling to go into, you can get a lot of weeds around that. So you still do have to weed some. A good barrier of 2 to 3 inches of mulch, like a good cedar or pine shavings, is a good way to keep down the weeds in your garden. But I mean, this is outdoors, so you are going to end up with some weeds in your garden. It just matters if you pick them when they're that tall or if they're that tall. So if you are someone who goes out there on a regular basis and does your weeds, once, twice, 3 times a week, and you really keep your weeds down in your garden and you give you the room for your plants, then, give yourself 10 points. Your garden being, overcome by weeds, it makes your plants fight for nutrients, it makes them fight for water, it makes them fight for sun, so they can really grow tall, especially if you get things like ivy and stuff like that in your garden. Then you can lose your plants pretty quick that way. So if you let your garden be overcome by weeds and you didn't do anything to stop it, then 0 points. So the second one, insect control. Now there's a lot of ways you can control insects. You can do chemicals. I'm not a big fan of chemicals. You can use things, even if you go organic, pyrethrin, BT, neem oil, things of that nature. Then you end up having chemicals that you're spraying in your yard. You can, if you've got breathing problems like my COPD, my wife's asthma, chemicals can exacerbate that. My best form of weed control is either right here, picking caterpillars and stuff like that off my plants, Or what I like to do is grab 2 blocks of scrap wood from building our garden beds. I keep them in a little bucket, and I will take 2 of them just like this, and I will sneak up on the bugs and squish them. I've done that with Japanese beetles. I've done that with lily bugs, things of that nature. So if you were very active in maintaining insects in your bed, getting the bad ones out but keeping the good ones in, such as bees, plucked wasp. A plucked wasp looks almost like a scorpion with a backwards tail. The tail goes up and like this, and it lays. It's a parasitic wasp, but it's really good. It will kill off beetles and various bugs in your garden. They get rid of aphids. They get rid of, So putting things like marigolds in there will help attract the beneficial bugs. Ants hate the smell of marigolds, and ants carry aphids to the plants. So that's a good natural way. The other way is to plant things like around our tomatoes to try to keep the tomato hornworm away, which fingers crossed that we never get any. I've never seen any in person, but they are ugly little buggers that planting dill in amongst your tomatoes will keep the tomato hornworm away because it doesn't like the fragrance. So if you were really active, then 10 points. If you lost your crops, your things like that to insects, then 0 points. The next one, soil quality. A lot of people think that you can just dig a hole in the ground, put a plant in, and you're done. Really what you need to add are a couple of things. You can add things like fertilizer. You can add things like kelp meal, fish emulsion. I know someone that uses fish heads and lime. We add an organic fertilizer, granulated, along with compost. The compost is instant food for the plants, and the granulated fertilizer takes probably 2 to 3 weeks to break down, so it's a water-soluble nutrient for the soil. Some people do use synthetic fertilizers. That's on you if you want to use it. I used it my first year of gardening. Now I go fully organic. Compost is our first food for our plants, and then we have the granulated Jobs, which works really well. I've also used a water soluble for our grow room, for our seed starting room. I use a fish emulsion in water. For your soil quality, if you maintained your soil quality and you fed it with compost or you fed it with fertilizer, if you did organic or synthetic, doesn't matter. That's your choice. So go ahead and give yourself 10 points for maintaining soil quality. The next one is a very hard one for some people, especially for a first-year gardener. I have a lot of people who say, I have a brown thumb, that I can't grow anything. So that brings us to crop success. If you were able to enjoy the crops in your garden, such as your tomatoes, you used them on your sandwiches, your burgers, whatever you used them for. Grew cucumbers, grew peppers. One of the easiest things to grow is lettuce, spinach, or peas. If you grew those and ate them and your crops were successful, then great, 10 points. If you didn't do anything and you lost your crops to weeds, you lost them to bugs, then your crops failed, different story. So that brings us to watering. Last year I did almost 0 watering by hand. Our containers I did by hand because we grew tomatoes in containers last year, and those were our cocktail tomatoes. Those had to be watered by hand. The rest of the garden, we had so much rain last year. We had record-breaking numbers. I think in 1 month we had something like 5 or 6 inches of rain, which is a lot of rain over 17 garden beds. So I let the rain take care of those, but I did maintain soil moisture for our crops. I did check the soil, make sure that things weren't dried out. If they were drying out and we didn't have rain in the forecast, I would water just with a watering can. I've also got an irrigation system that I never hooked up last year because we had plumbing issues for it. So, you know, if you actively watered and maintained your soil moisture, things of that, 10 points. So that brings us to seed success. Okay, so this one here says, did your seeds germinate well or did nothing grow? Some seeds are very, very hard to germinate. If you try to grow stevia, I think it's like a 10 or 20% success rate. We have some that we got from various places that it said 83% germination, so we added extra seeds. So I planted extra. So this year for our peppers, I used self-seed seed that we've had for like 3 years. I planted, Jenny planted 3 seeds per cell, and almost every single one of them came up. So our seed saving that we used, very successful. Sometimes I know there's one big box store in the area that they keep their seeds out in the outdoors in their top stock through the winter, and that hard freeze can really kill some seeds sometimes. So so sometimes a whole lot doesn't grow. So, but if you were very successful, I have a hard time saying that word, then 10 points for your seed success. The next one was cost. Everyone always told me when I worked at the big box store, when I ran the garden center, gardening is so expensive. You know, plants, tomato plants are, you know, $5, $10, $15, $20 a piece, depending on what size you get. You know, it's hard for me to have more than one plant because it's just so expensive, or seeds are, you know, $2, $3, $4, $5 a pack, and I want a huge garden, and so I'm trying to do this, and then I'm building beds, or I have to do tomato cages, or I have to buy wire to protect my crops, things of that nature. It's so expensive. Our first garden bed cost us $50. Okay, a bag of fertilizer cost us $7, and then we bought things to protect them, you know, tomato cages, stuff like that. So the first year we spent about $100, and Jenny had just started working at the big box store, and I was an artist who was doing photography, and you know, money was getting tight before I started there, and that winter or that summer it was really hard for us, but then we ended up saving up some money. We were able to expand our garden, and every year we add a little bit more, and we're going to add some more this year. And so it can get rather expensive to build your garden up. So if you were smart and reused things that you had, we're building a deck for a greenhouse. I have the lumber over here. I'm extending the garden. I've already got half the lumber I have from last year when I built our grow tables. It was all built with scrap lumber. Things of that nature, you know, fencing built with scrap. So if you are very cost effective and you're able to maintain your garden without it costing more than what it would have cost you to buy your food at the store, then 10 points. Next one, anno control, which we just touched on a little bit. If you've ever seen the picture, the cover photo on our Facebook page, or I think it's on our YouTube as well, of our garden at night, we have a 4-foot tall fence all the way around. We don't have deer here, so 4 feet does it. Keeps the rabbits out, the groundhogs out. Doesn't keep the squirrels and chipmunks out. Doesn't keep the cats out, but it does keep the more aggressive skunks, raccoons, things of that nature. So if you did really good on animal control and you protected your crops, whether it's with wire or even electric fencing, you know, electric fencing has become really affordable in the past few years. So 10 points for being able to control it. Now, this next one is really kind of hard because weather. Did you plant your crops in the right temperature weather? Your cold weather crops, I wouldn't plant in August. Okay, August is too warm, even here in Maine. So, doing things such as planting your spinach or lettuce, things of that nature in cooler temperatures is what you need. Once those temperatures get up over 70, it's really quick for those to bolt. The vegetation becomes bitter, so your lettuce goes bitter, your spinach goes bitter, things of that nature. It's really hard to keep those things going through the summer unless you're using shade cloth, or if you're only planting or spring or fall, and that's when you're eating those. Things of that nature. Some herbs do better in cooler temperatures. Cilantro, dill does really good in the summer, but not so good in the spring. So it's just kind of did you plant your crops at the right time, or did you end up with bolting and losing those? So that goes back to the crop success. So planting in the right temperature in the summer, fall, spring. Some things can even take a hard frost or a freeze, like your brassicas. So if you planted your crops at the right time and you had your crop success from there, then go ahead and give yourself 10 points. And the very last one, and this is a big thing with me, crop maintenance, or plant maintenance. Okay, did you maintain your plants? Again, that goes back to insect control, weed control. The big one for me, though, is pruning your tomatoes. Most people just put tomatoes in the ground and leave them. They don't realize that we prune ours up about 18 inches off the bottom. We single stem, and then we let them bush out. And that 18 inches that we get, most blight is caused by water hitting the soil and getting on the leaves, and then you get blight because you don't have good airflow. It's a fungus. It's a soil-borne fungus. So if you keep your plants way down on your tomatoes, then you'll almost surely get blight. I taught a guy at the big box store his second year gardening. He said, on my tomatoes last year, I lost them all to blight. It's so hard. Why is it so hard to grow tomatoes? I heard they're really easy. And I said, are you pruning your tomato plants? No. Do you have good airflow? Are you, bottom 18 inches of 12 to 18 inches, pruning that up so that the water doesn't get on your leaves? No. Okay. Then that's something you need to do. You need to prune your tomatoes really well, hill up a little bit of soil so you can get some extra roots out of it, but keep that 12 to 18 inches clear of growth, and water close to the soil, and you will have less chance of blight. So I, every week, prune our tomatoes to make sure we get that good airflow so we don't get blight. I've only had blight once in 8 years, and I'm lucky, knock on wood, that we haven't had too much. So that's our little test, our little quiz, all 10 questions. So check and see, where do you stand. If you ended up 80 or 70 or below, actually, then you have a moderate green thumb. If you ended up with 100, then fantastic. You are the most perfect gardener out there. But I've got some friends who are fantastic gardeners, have been doing it like 20 years, and they've had problems with their crops. They've had problems with insects. So no one's perfect, so I doubt very many of you got 100. I scored about a 75 to 80 on it when I took it the first time, and so I thank you for your time today. Our time's almost up, so again, keep your food spicy, your thumb green, and we'll talk to you later. Have a great day.